The curse of seeing. Why intelligence and happiness are psychologically incompatible. Here is what Carl Gustav Jung, the great psychological visionary, understood about the relationship between intelligence and happiness. They are fundamentally, psychologically incompatible. Not because highly intelligent people are incapable of experiencing joy, they can, but because intelligence systematically dismantles the very mechanisms that generate lasting, sustained happiness for the vast majority of the human population. Think deeply about what truly makes most people happy. It is the core, unshakable belief that life has inherent meaning. It is the trust that their choices are significant. It is the profound feeling of being an essential part of something larger. It is the ability to maintain unquestioning hope for the future. It is finding purpose deeply embedded within cultural and spiritual narratives. These are not facts. These are powerful, necessary psychological constructions, stories the mind tells itself to make the often terrifying nature of existence feel purposeful, manageable, and ultimately rewarding. For people of average intelligence, these crucial constructions remain fully intact. They believe without questioning too deeply. They accept without analyzing too thoroughly. They feel meaning without deconstructing its origins. Their intelligence is perfectly sufficient for functioning, but critically insufficient for the kind of rigorous, relentless analysis that ultimately destroys comforting illusions. But past a certain non-negotiable intelligence threshold, Jung noticed, this dynamic changes dramatically. You cannot help but see the construction. You question reflexively, analyze automatically, deconstruct constantly. And every single comforting illusion, meaning, purpose, hope, connection, reveals itself as nothing more than a magnificent psychological architecture rather than an immutable cosmic truth. Jung called this revelation the curse of seeing. Intelligence gives you profound clarity about reality, but that clarity includes seeing that most of what makes the average person happy is, in fact, an illusion. And once you see the machinery, once you see the strings, you cannot unsee it. You cannot voluntarily return to the blessed ignorance that allows most people to be perfectly content. This is the central reason why highly intelligent people are so often deeply, profoundly unhappy. Not because they are broken, pathological, or deficient, but because they are awake to certain harsh realities that most people remain fundamentally protected from perceiving. And those realities, about meaninglessness, mortality, and the constructed nature of purpose, are inherently, powerfully uncomfortable. These 5 core insights explain exactly how intelligence creates suffering and why most highly intelligent people feel isolated in an unhappiness that seems utterly inexplicable to everyone else. The destruction of meaning. The first reason intelligence creates unhappiness is the most fundamental, and once you understand it, you will grasp why the old adage, "Ignorance is bliss," holds devastating psychological truth. Intelligence systematically destroys the comforting illusions that make life genuinely bearable for the majority of the population. And without those illusions, you are left confronting a raw reality that is existentially uncomfortable. Here is what Jung observed. Average intelligence allows people to live securely within cultural narratives without questioning them too deeply. God gives life meaning. Hard work leads to success. Love conquers all. Justice always prevails. Everything happens for a profound reason. These narratives are not empirically true, but they are psychologically necessary for the survival of the masses. High intelligence cannot, will not leave these narratives intact. You automatically see the contradictions, the clear wishful thinking, the primal psychological need driving the belief. You cannot simply accept that everything happens for a reason. You immediately see it as a coping mechanism for terrifying randomness. You cannot simply believe justice prevails. You relentlessly notice all the injustice that doesn't. Jung termed this involuntary deconstruction. Your intelligence is not choosing to destroy comforting beliefs. It is incapable of stopping the analysis until the underlying construction becomes painfully visible. It is precisely like watching a magic show after someone has thoroughly explained every single trick. The dove still appears from the hat, but you see the false bottom. The assistant still gets sawed in half, but you see the precise mechanism of the illusion box. The magic is gone. Not because the performance changed, but because you can see behind the veil. And for highly intelligent people, this revelation happens with everything. You watch people find solace and meaning in religion, and you see the clear psychological architecture of comfort. You watch them celebrate career success, and you see the arbitrary status-based game. You watch them fall in love, and you see the underlying biochemical bonding plus the narrative construction layered on top. Every source of fundamental joy available to the average person is like a powerful magic trick whose mechanism you can now see. It is still happening, but for you, it is no longer magical. This is the first core source of suffering. Intelligence strips away the vital illusions that most people require for their happiness. You cannot believe in divine purpose. You immediately understand it as human projection. You cannot find ultimate meaning in career. You recognize it as arbitrary cultural conditioning. You cannot lose yourself in love. You instantly see the underlying biochemistry and the predictable attachment patterns. Every source of meaning available to average intelligence becomes a transparent construction to high intelligence. Not through cynicism, but through clarity. You are not trying to ruin meaning. You are simply unable to maintain the illusion of inherent meaning when you can see its construction so clearly. Jung observed this creates a particular kind of suffering he called existential exposure. Most people are psychologically protected by comforting beliefs. Highly intelligent people stand exposed to raw reality, seeing it exactly as it is, random, temporary, and ultimately meaningless, without the psychological shield average intelligence provides. And here is what makes this unbearable. You cannot choose ignorance. You cannot voluntarily go back to believing what you now see through. Intelligence is a one-way door. Once you have deconstructed a belief, you cannot reconstruct it as if you do not know its fundamental construction. You cannot watch the magic show with unadulterated wonder again once you have been backstage and seen the inner workings. This is why highly intelligent people report feeling a profound, aching emptiness, even when they are externally successful. They have achieved what culture aggressively dictates should bring happiness, but they can see that those achievements are simply arbitrary status markers in a game they never chose to play. The achievement is real, but the meaning attached to it is constructed. When you truly understand this, that intelligence destroys illusions necessarily, not maliciously, you cease wondering why you cannot just be happy like everyone else. You realize they have psychological protection, you do not. They can believe without seeing through the belief, and you cannot. The game without escape. The first reason explained the loss of inherent meaning, but this second insight reveals an even deeper, more persistent source of suffering unique to high intelligence. You see that life is fundamentally a game with arbitrary rules, but you are still brutally forced to play it. And that toxic combination of clarity and compulsion creates profound, chronic unhappiness. Jung noticed this pattern repeatedly in his most intelligent patients. They could clearly see that society's values are constructed, that success metrics are arbitrary, that status hierarchies are nothing more than evolutionary holdovers. They understood the game's mechanics, but they still had to play it. They still had to work, earn money, maintain relationships, and relentlessly participate in systems they saw as fundamentally absurd. This creates what Jung called existential claustrophobia. It is precisely like being the only person fully awake in a lucid dream. Everyone else is fully immersed, playing their roles, experiencing the dream as undeniable reality. But you are aware that you are dreaming. You can see the dream logic. You recognize the constructed nature of everything. You understand that none of it ultimately matters outside the dream's confines. But here is the paralyzing problem. You cannot wake up. You are stuck inside the dream with everyone else. And while they are having authentic dream experiences, fear feels real, joy feels real, achievement feels real. You are watching yourself have dream experiences while knowing fundamentally that they are dreams. You still feel the required emotions. You still go through the required motions. But you do so with the constant, insidious awareness that it is all a dream game and you cannot escape. For people of average intelligence, the game feels real. The rules feel necessary. The prizes feel profoundly valuable. They are immersed in the game without seeing it as a game. Thus, their participation feels meaningful rather than an exercise in absurdity. But high intelligence creates an insurmountable distance. You see the game from outside it while simultaneously being forced to remain inside it. You understand the arbitrariness while being subject to its rigid rules. And that split consciousness, participating fully while seeing through the participation, is psychologically torturous. You are playing chess while simultaneously seeing that chess is just moving carved pieces of wood across a checkered board according to arbitrary rules everyone agreed to pretend matter. You still must move the pieces. You still experience the emotions of winning or losing. But you cannot unsee that it is an invented game with invented meaning. This is the unique suffering of high intelligence, clarity without freedom. You see through the game but are forced to play it. You understand its profound arbitrariness, but must participate as if it matters. You recognize the fundamental absurdity, but need to act as if it is deadly serious. Jung observed this creates what he termed the intelligent person's double life. Externally, you are participating, working, achieving, relating. Internally, you are a constant observer, watching yourself participate in a system you see as fundamentally meaningless. You are simultaneously the player and the observer sees what the player is doing as absurd. This internal split creates deep exhaustion. Every single action requires you to actively suppress your internal awareness of its arbitrariness. Every achievement requires you to pretend you genuinely care about something you see as constructed value. And here is what makes this unbearable. You cannot share this awareness. You cannot talk about this reality without sounding profoundly nihilistic, clinically depressed, or unforgivably arrogant. Tell someone, "I see through the game we're all playing," and they will instantly think you are damaged or damaged. They cannot understand that you are not rejecting meaning from depression. You are simply unable to maintain the illusion from sheer intelligence. The game continues. You continue playing. But unlike everyone else, you are doing it with the full, non-stop awareness that it is merely a game. And that awareness, that inability to lose yourself in the game like others do, is a constant, quiet source of suffering. When you understand this, that you see the game while being forced to play it, you stop wondering why success does not bring you happiness. Success is a game prize. You achieved it, but you can see it is merely a game prize. And that seeing prevents the visceral satisfaction the other players feel when they win. The cognitive isolation paradox. The first two reasons explain the existential suffering, but this third one reveals why highly intelligent people experience such profound loneliness. Genuine social connection requires operating at shared cognitive levels, and when your intelligence is significantly higher, Maintaining that connection requires constantly and aggressively dimming your own cognition, which is psychologically exhausting and ultimately profoundly alienating. Jung discovered that deep relationships require cognitive synchronization. People bond through shared understanding, similar processing levels, and compatible ways of seeing the world. When intelligence levels are similar, this synchronization happens naturally, effortlessly. But when there is a significant structural intelligence gap, connection becomes effortful, often impossible. Here is what happens. You are in a conversation and you are processing on multiple complex levels. The superficial content, the unspoken subtext, the underlying psychological dynamics, the broader implications, the logical inconsistencies. Meanwhile, the other person is processing only at face value. To connect with them, you have to consciously slow down, simplify, and translate your actual complex thoughts into accessible, digestible versions. This translation is constant. Someone shares their excitement about a minor promotion, and you are simultaneously happy for them while keenly aware of hedonic adaptation, the arbitrariness of status gains, and how this likely will not increase their long-term, deep happiness. But you cannot say that, so you translate your complex understanding into simple, unqualified congratulations. Jung called this cognitive code switching. Highly intelligent people learn to operate at different mental levels depending on the audience. Around most people, they dim their intelligence, simplify their thoughts, and speak at accessible levels. Around rare intellectual equals, they can finally operate at full capacity. But those equals are rare, so most of life is spent dimmed. One of Jung's patients, a woman with a genius-level IQ, described the loneliness to him. "I feel like I'm constantly translating. Someone tells me about their day, and I'm processing 17 layers of psychological dynamics they aren't even aware of. But I can't share what I'm seeing. It would seem weird, intense, too analytical. So I smile and respond at their level, which means I'm never actually connecting from where I actually am. I'm connecting from a dimmed version of myself. And that's lonely, even when I'm surrounded by people." This is the social suffering of high intelligence. Connection requires self-suppression. To genuinely relate, you have to operate below your natural inherent level. To be liked, you have to aggressively hide how you actually think. To maintain relationships, you have to constantly translate complex thoughts into simple expressions. And when you do find someone operating at your level, someone who can match your processing speed, depth, and complexity, the connection is so dramatically different. It highlights precisely how alone you have been. You realize this is what connection could feel like, and by comparison, all your other relationships feel like performing connection rather than truly experiencing it. Jung observed that highly intelligent people often report feeling most alone when physically surrounded by people, because being with others while utterly unable to show them how you actually think is lonelier than being physically alone. At least in solitude, you do not have to suppress your cognition. You can think at full capacity without dimming for others. This creates what Jung called the intelligence isolation paradox. The more intelligent you are, the more you desperately need intellectual equals. But the more intelligent you are, the fewer equals exist. Thus, your need for connection increases exponentially, while your pool of possible, fulfilling connections decreases. If you stop dimming, if you operate at full intelligence around everyone, you will instantly be labeled intense, weird, too much. People will sense the cognitive gap and feel uncomfortable. So you keep dimming, keep translating, and the price is profound, pervasive loneliness. When you understand this, that connection requires dimming your intelligence, you stop wondering why most relationships feel unsatisfying. Most relationships are connections between a simplified version of you and the full version of them. And connecting from a simplified self is not truly connecting at all. The amplification of suffering. The previous three reasons built the foundation of existential suffering, but this fourth one reveals why internal suffering is amplified and made infinitely worse by high intelligence. High intelligence processes suffering more deeply and completely. You do not just feel pain, you automatically analyze it, understand its cosmic implications, and see all the ways it connects to larger existential realities. Most people experience suffering in immediate, contained ways. They are sad about a breakup, anxious about work, grieving a loss. The suffering is painful, but it stays within predictable emotional boundaries. They feel the emotion without necessarily understanding all its complex philosophical dimensions. High intelligence cannot experience suffering simply. When you go through hardship, your intelligence automatically contextualizes it. A breakup is not just loss, it is a sudden, stark awareness of attachment patterns, biological bonding mechanisms, and the temporary, impermanent nature of all relationships. Work anxiety is not just stress, it is a profound recognition of meaninglessness, mortality, and the absurdity of time trading life for money in systems you see as arbitrary. It is like having a psychological microscope you cannot turn off. Most people experience pain at a normal resolution. It hurts, but they see only the surface. Your intelligence automatically zooms in to the cellular level, then the molecular, then the atomic. You see every dimension of the suffering simultaneously: the emotional pain, the psychological patterns, the existential implications, the philosophical questions it raises. Jung called this meta-suffering, suffering about suffering. You are experiencing the immediate pain plus analyzing what the pain signifies about the entire structure of existence. You are feeling grief plus understanding that grief reveals the temporary, limited nature of everything you love. You are anxious plus aware that anxiety is your psyche confronting fundamental uncertainty and its own mortality. One of Jung's patients described this after a relationship ending. "I wasn't just grieving the relationship, I was confronting the fact that all connections are temporary, all intimacy is partial, all love is biochemistry plus narrative. My intelligence wouldn't let me just feel sad. It kept showing me what the sadness meant about everything. So I was simultaneously grieving a relationship and grieving the illusion that lasting connection is possible. The pain was multiplied by understanding. Every painful experience becomes an entry point to deep existential awareness, and that awareness ruthlessly amplifies the original pain. You are not just hurting, you are hurting while being completely aware of all the implications of that hurt. This is the suffering amplification of intelligence. You cannot experience pain naively. Average intelligence feels hurt and processes it emotionally. High intelligence feels hurt and processes it emotionally, intellectually, existentially, and philosophically. Every dimension of your cognition engages with the suffering, which transforms simple pain into complex, multi-layered agony. Jung noticed highly intelligent people also anticipate suffering more accurately. Your advanced pattern recognition extends to seeing probable futures. You do not just live through difficulties, you see them coming, understand their likelihood, and experience anticipatory suffering that others do not feel until the crisis is already upon them. This creates what Jung called temporal suffering expansion. You do not just suffer in the present, you suffer about the past through relentless analysis of how it shaped you. And you suffer about the future through accurate, non-stop prediction. Your intelligence spreads suffering across time, reliving past pain through understanding its impact, and pre-living future pain through seeing its high probability. When you understand this, that intelligence amplifies suffering by adding analytical dimensions to emotional pain. You stop wondering why you take things so hard. You are not more sensitive. You are simply more aware. You are processing suffering at levels most people cannot or will not access. The intelligence end point. The previous 4 reasons built toward this final profound conclusion. The deepest source of suffering that high intelligence creates is this. High intelligence eventually reaches a conclusion that is psychologically devastating. Life has no inherent external meaning. And unlike average intelligence, which can successfully avoid, dismiss, or ignore this conclusion, your intelligence makes it utterly inescapable. This is what Jung identified as the intelligence end point. Follow any line of deep questioning far enough. Apply sufficient analytical rigor. Strip away all comforting psychological constructs, and you arrive at meaninglessness. Not as a symptom of clinical depression, but as a conclusion, an accurate, honest, intellectually rigorous conclusion. There is no inherent purpose, no cosmic plan, no ultimate external meaning to existence. Average intelligence can successfully avoid this conclusion. They stop questioning before reaching it. They accept inherited meaning without rigorously analyzing it. They maintain faith through psychological need rather than rational, objective examination. Their intelligence is sufficient for functioning, but utterly insufficient for the kind of relentless analysis that reaches nihilism. But high intelligence cannot stop. You question automatically. You analyze reflexively. You follow logic wherever it leads, and it leads inevitably to the recognition. Meaning is human construction, not cosmic truth. We create purpose because purposelessness is unbearable, not because purpose actually exists. Think of it like peeling an onion, desperately looking for the core. Most people peel away a few layers, family, career, faith, love, and find something satisfying enough to stop. But high intelligence keeps peeling layer after layer after layer. And when you reach the center expecting to find some essential truth, you discover there is nothing there. The onion is all layers. There is no core. And you cannot unpeel the onion once you have seen that truth. Jung watched his highly intelligent patients reach this conclusion repeatedly. They would arrive having thought themselves into existential crisis, not from emotional failure, but from clarity. They had analyzed existence thoroughly and concluded, at bottom, it means nothing. We are biological organisms on a rock in space. Consciousness is accidental. Elimination is absolute. This is the ultimate suffering of high intelligence. You reach truth, and the truth is that there is no ultimate truth. You seek meaning deeply enough to discover that meaning is constructed. You question thoroughly enough to find that the biggest questions do not have answers. You think clearly enough to see that clear thinking reveals emptiness at the core. And unlike people who reach this conclusion and dismiss it, your intelligence will not let you dismiss it. You cannot go back to believing what you now see as a construction. You cannot return to the comfort of inherited meaning when you understand it is just inherited, not inherently meaningful. You cannot unsee the void once you have looked directly into it. Jung called this existential maturity without existential comfort. You have matured enough to see reality clearly, but that clarity includes seeing that reality offers absolutely no inherent comfort. You are psychologically developed enough to face the truth, and the truth is that existence is fundamentally absurd. This is why highly intelligent people report feeling profound emptiness even when their lives are objectively good. They are not depressed about their circumstances. They are confronting the meaninglessness that high intelligence eventually reveals. But here is where Jung offers something absolutely crucial. This devastating conclusion that life is meaningless is not the end point. It is the crisis point, the threshold where intelligence must fundamentally transform or remain stuck in suffering. Because Jung discovered there is a level beyond this nihilistic conclusion. Not through rejecting the conclusion, it is accurate, but through a transformation in your relationship to meaninglessness. Not finding meaning despite meaninglessness, but aggressively creating meaning because of meaninglessness. Not believing in inherent purpose, but consciously constructing a chosen purpose with full awareness of its constructed nature. This is the ultimate transformation highly intelligent people must make, from seeking meaning to creating meaning, from needing cosmic purpose to generating personal purpose, from requiring truth to be comforting to accepting truth as it is, empty, and deliberately building meaning anyway. Jung called this conscious meaning making. You know meaning is constructed. You create it anyway. You understand purpose is invented. You invent it deliberately. You see that life is absurd. You live meaningfully despite that. Not through denial, but through radical choice. This transformation is what changes intelligence from a curse into pure consciousness. The suffering remains. You still see clearly, still process deeply, still understand meaninglessness, but you are no longer utterly devastated by it. You have accepted the void and decided to build meaning right in its full view. If you are highly intelligent and deeply unhappy, Jung would tell you this: your intelligence has successfully brought you to an accurate perception of reality, and reality perceived clearly is uncomfortable. The 5 reasons intelligence creates suffering. 1. Illusions destroyed. You see clearly, which removes comfort. 2. Seeing the game. You understand arbitrariness while participating. 3. Connection requires dimming. You are lonely from cognitive isolation. 4. Suffering amplified. You process pain at multiple dimensions. 5. Meaninglessness revealed. You have reached truth, and truth is empty. These are not deficits. They are consequences of seeing clearly. Your unhappiness is not irrational. It is a rational response to truths most people remain protected from perceiving. But Jung's crucial promise: this suffering is a threshold, not an end point. You have used intelligence to deconstruct inherited meaning. Now you must use it to consciously construct chosen meaning. This is the transformation that changes intelligence from a curse into consciousness. You are not broken. You are at the crisis point that high intelligence inevitably creates. And this crisis is calling you to transformation,